The Arizona sun doesn't just warm, it executes. And Aria Harrington was dying under its sentence. Fleeing the wreckage of her wagon train, she collapsed into the dust, a debutante from Boston, reduced to cracked lips and a final, desperate prayer. When a shadow fell over her, she found the strength to look up. He was a phantom of the desert, all hard lines and dark eyes. Delirious, she mistook his strength for safety and slept against his Apache chest. But when she woke, the savior was a captor, the shelter a cage, and she was to be his unwilling, burning bride. The carriage wheel struck the rock with a sound like a pistol shot, splintering oak and civilized intentions all at once. Aria Harrington was thrown against the velvet upholstery, her pristine, pearl-buttoned traveling suit, utterly impractical for the Arizona territory, now smeared with the fine, red dust that coated everything. Outside, the screaming had already begun. "Keep your head down, Miss Harrington," bellowed Elias Thorne, the wagon master her father had hired. He was a man with a face like cured leather and eyes that never seemed to blink, employed by the Thorne Overland Company. Aria wasn't a coward, but she was a creature of Boston, drawing rooms and string quartets. This land was brutal, a sun-baked canvas of malice. She was traveling to Prescott to meet her fiancé, Julian Vance, a man whose letters spoke of opportunity, civilization, and a future secured by her father's political influence. Senator Miles Harrington was, after all, the man pushing the new Territorial Expansion Act through Congress, a bill that would secure the railroad's path straight through this godless red rock. The attackers were not the Apache she had been taught to fear. They wore dusty army trousers and civilian shirts, their faces masked by kerchiefs. They were efficient, silent, and utterly ruthless. They weren't raiding for supplies. They were executing. Elias Thorne burst the carriage door open. "They're not bandits, miss. They're something else. Run! Due west. Don't stop. But the others. There are no others. Go!" He shoved her out the far side of the wagon, into a dry wash. Aria fell, her ankle twisting painfully, and scrambled away as the sound of gunfire echoed, punctuated by a final, terrible silence. She ran. She ran until her lungs felt like they were filled with hot sand, and the pearls on her suit dug into her skin. For 2 days, she walked. The belle of Boston, the senator's daughter, became a ghost haunting the canyons. Her practical fiancé, Julian, seemed 1,000 miles away. Her powerful father, Miles, was just a name. Here, she was just thirsty. On the third morning, she saw him. She had crested a low rise, her vision swimming. The sun was an enemy's eye. Below her, a man stood beside a jet-black stallion. He was tall, and even from a distance, he seemed to radiate a stillness that was alien to the frantic, buzzing heat. He wasn't one of the men who had attacked her wagon. He wore buckskin leggings, and his chest, broad and bronzed, was bare. His black hair was held back by a simple leather band. He was Apache. The real Apache. Aria's fear, which had been a dull throb, spiked into pure terror. This was the savage she'd read about in the dime novels, the threat her father was trying to pacify. She tried to turn, to crawl back, but her body betrayed her. Her legs folded. She pitched forward, rolling a few feet down the scree slope. The last thing she heard was the soft scuff of moccasins on rock. She woke to the agonizing bliss of water. A wet cloth was being pressed to her cracked lips. She drank, greedily, the water tasting of minerals and life. Her eyes fluttered open. He was kneeling over her. Up close, he was devastating. His face was a map of contradictions, high, proud cheekbones, and a strong jaw that spoke of his native blood. But his eyes were a startling, clear grey, like a winter storm. They held no pity, only a dark, calculating intelligence. She was so weak, so broken. The terror was still there, but it was blanketed by a profound, exhausted delirium. He lifted her. His arm was steel, his chest a wall of sun-warmed muscle and skin. He smelled of horse, sweat, and something ancient, like pine and dry earth. "Please," she whispered, the word a dry rasp. "Help me." He said nothing. His expression didn't change. He simply held her, and the world began to fade again. She was dying, she was sure of it. But this man, this terrifying phantom, was a solid, warm anchor in the spinning void. Her body, independent of her will, sought his warmth as the desert night chill began to set in. She pressed her face against his shoulder, her hand weakly gripping the buckskin of his legging. Aria Harrington, daughter of Senator Miles Harrington, slept against his Apache chest. She mistook the heat of the predator for the warmth of a savior. It was the last mistake she would make as the woman she used to be. When Aria woke again, the world was soft. The ground beneath her wasn't the jagged rock of the canyon. It was a bed of thick, cured buffalo hides. The air wasn't dry. It was humid and filled with the scent of herbs and cook fire. A sliver of sunlight pierced a small opening in the roof above her, illuminating the swirling dust motes. She was in a wickiup, a domed Apache dwelling. She sat up too fast. Her head spun, and a wave of nausea rolled over her. Her ankle, she realized, had been expertly bound. Her blistered, filthy skin was clean. Someone had washed her. Her tattered, pearl-buttoned suit was gone, replaced by a simple, loose-fitting buckskin dress. The violation of it sent a fresh wave of panic through her. She scrambled backward, her heart hammering. The flap of the wickiup opened, casting a tall, imposing silhouette against the bright morning light. He entered, ducking his head. It was the man from the desert, the Apache. In the close confines of the dwelling, he was even more overwhelming. He wasn't just tall, he was built with the lean, functional power of a wolf. The storm-grey eyes that had been her last memory were now fixed on her, sharp and appraising. He held a small wooden bowl. "You are awake," he said. His voice was a low, measured rumble. It held no accent she could place, just a clipped, precise way of speaking English. "Where am I?" Aria demanded, her own voice sounding thin and reedy. "Who are you? What have you done to me?" "You are in my camp. I am Kale, and I have saved your life." He set the bowl down near her. It was a thin stew. "Eat." "I will not." Kyle's gaze hardened. "You will. Your weakness is an inconvenience." He made no move to force her. He simply watched, his stillness more unnerving than any threat. Aria looked at the stew, her stomach cramped with a hunger so profound it eclipsed her fear. She hated him for it. She hated him for saving her, for cleaning her, for clothing her. She hated him for the authority that rolled off him in palpable waves. She snatched the bowl and began to eat, the warm, savory broth a shock to her system. She didn't look at him. "My fiancé," she said between bites, trying to reclaim some semblance of her station. "He is Julian Vance. He's waiting for me in Prescott. My father is Senator Miles Harrington. When they discover I am missing..." "They already know." Aria froze, the spoon halfway to her lips. "What?" "I sent a scout to the pony soldiers at Fort Verde 2 days ago. I told them I had you." The bowl clattered to the floor, spilling the rest of the stew. You kidnapped me? After I thought... You thought I was a fool." Kyle knelt, his expression unreadable. His proximity was suffocating. "You are not a lost traveler, Aria Harrington. You are a tool. You are leverage." "Leverage? For what? Gold?" A dark, humorless smile touched his lips. Your father's name. He signs his Expansion Act in Washington. And here, my people's graves are dug up by his railroad. It all clicked into place, a horrifying, perfect puzzle. The attack on the wagon train. You attacked my wagon. You killed those men. No. The word was flat. Absolute. That was not my work. Those were white men. Your men. Paid by the Thorn Overland Company. Lies! She spat. Elias Thorn tried to save me. Elias Thorn died because his employer, Bartholomew Thorn, wanted this land cleared. He stages raids, blames my people, and gives the army justification to wipe us out. He is your father's business partner. Arya's mind reeled. Black Bart Thorn. She'd heard the name in her father's study. A railroad baron. A man of vision, her father had called him. It doesn't matter, Kyle continued, rising to his full height. Thorn's men scattered your escort. I simply collected what was left. You bastard, she whispered, the word feeling foreign and sharp on her tongue. I am many things, Kyle said, turning to the flap. And now you are mine. I am not. I am a citizen of the United States. I demand you release me. He paused, his back to her. You are in the stronghold of the Chiricahua. Your laws are dust on the wind here. Your father's paper means nothing. Here, I am the law. The flap dropped, plunging the wickiup back into shadow. Arya was alone. She was not a guest. She was not a survivor. She was a prisoner. She crawled to the opening and peered out. The camp was nestled in a high, hidden canyon, invisible from the desert floor. It was a small, severe place. Women were scraping hides, men tending to horses. A few children played a quiet game with stones. They were all thin, their faces etched with hardship, but their eyes were proud. A young, brutal-looking warrior with a fresh scar down his cheek spotted her. He stalked over, his hand on his knife. Taza! Kyle's voice cut across the compound, sharp as an order. The warrior, Taza, glared at her, spat in the dust at her feet, and turned away. An older woman with hair like spun silver, Narlin, approached her. She offered Arya a water skin, her eyes filled with a sad, weary knowledge. Arya took it. She had slept in the arms of her enemy. She had mistaken the silence of a calculating warrior for the peace of a savior. And now, she was awake. She was in the heart of the fire, and she was beginning to burn. The sun beat down on the parade ground of Fort Verde, a square of packed dirt that passed for the heart of American authority in the territory. Major Marcus Croft read the message for the third time, his face flushing a deeper shade of crimson. He what? The scout, a jittery man named Peterson, who had been released by the Apache, flinched. He says he has her, Major. The Harrington girl. Says he'll trade her. Trade her? We don't negotiate with renegades. Croft crumpled the piece of rawhide. Kale. I knew he was trouble. He's not even a full blood. A half-breed cur leading the last of the hostiles. At that moment, a second rider galloped into the fort, this one on a horse, lathered to a foam. Major, it's Mr. Vance. He's here from Prescott. Julian Vance burst into the commander's office, his elegant waistcoat and city hat smeared with trail dust. He was handsome in a soft, refined way, his features better suited to a bank than a battlefield. Major, I just received word. My fiancée, Arya. Her wagon. It's overdue. Croft's expression soured. He held up the crumpled rawhide. Your fiancée is alive, Mr. Vance. For now, she's been taken. By Kale. Julian's face went pale. Taken. Oh God, we must pay him. Whatever he wants. Her father, Senator Harrington, he'll authorize— He doesn't want money, son, Croft said, his voice grim. He wants the treaty torn up. He wants the Thorn Overland survey teams out of the Dragoon Mountains. He wants the railroad stopped. Julian looked bewildered. But that's impossible. The treaty is law. The railroad is progress. It's more than that. The scout, Peterson, interrupted, his voice shaky. He sent a second message, a personal one, for the senator. Croft snatched the second piece of hide from the scout's hand. He read it, and his blood ran cold. He looked at Julian, his eyes filled with a mix of pity and disgust. "What is it?" Julian demanded. "What does it say?" "The savage. He says, if the senator's troops, or Thorn's men, make one move into his territory..." Croft swallowed. He says, "Tell the senator he'll be gaining a son, not losing a daughter. She will be my bride." Julian stared, uncomprehending. "Bride? He's going to marry her, Mr. Vance. By his laws. A forced marriage. To defile her. To bind her to him. It's a threat. A barbaric, filthy threat." Julian Vance, the man of civilization, doubled over and was sick in the corner of the major's office. The unwilling bride threat was not a savage boast. It was a perfectly aimed political weapon. It struck at the two things a man like Senator Harrington valued most: his daughter's purity and his family's reputation. Back in the rancheria, Arya knew nothing of the message. She only knew the humiliation of her new life. Kyle had put her to work. "You will not be useless," he had stated flatly that morning, dragging her from the wickiup. Narlin, the old woman, was put in charge of her. Arya's first task was grinding corn on a metate, a flat stone. It was back-breaking, monotonous work. Her soft white hands, accustomed to needlepoint and piano keys, were cracked and bleeding within an hour. "You cry," Narlin observed, not unkindly. "It is just work." "This isn't work, this is slavery," Arya shot back, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "Slavery is when your children are stolen and your land is burned," Narlin replied, her voice flat. "This is survival." Tarza, the hostile warrior, circled her like a coyote. He mocked her in his own tongue, laughing at her weakness. Arya ignored him, her shame and anger a hot coal in her stomach. Kyle watched from a distance. He was sharpening arrowheads with a piece of obsidian, his hands moving with a fluid, deadly grace. He saw every stumble, every wince, every defiant glare she shot his way. She hated him. She hated his control, his cold eyes, his arrogant assumption that he owned her. She hated that her father was a senator, and she was on her knees grinding corn. That evening, he brought her to his own wickiup. It was larger, cleaner, adorned with several rifles and a few books. Books. The sight of them, a worn Shakespeare, a text on military strategy, was a profound shock. "You will stay here," he said. "I will not. I'll stay with Narlin." "Narlin's wickiup is for women, Tarza and the other men. They see you. They see a white woman. A prize." "And what do you see?" She spat. He stepped closer. The air crackled. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "I see a weapon, and I protect my weapons." "And the bride?" she whispered, a new cold fear creeping into her. Was that a lie, too? His grey eyes bored into hers. He hadn't told her about the message. How did she know? "Narlin told me," Arya lied, sensing his surprise. "She said you threatened to... It is a threat," he said, his voice dropping. "To make your father listen. He understands property. I have made you my property." "I am not your property," she yelled, shoving him. It was like shoving a granite cliff. He didn't budge. He caught her wrists. His grip was iron. You are my property, my leverage, my bride. You are whatever I say you are until your father gives my people back their land. You will sleep here. You will be safe from Tarza. You will only have to fear me." He released her, shoving her back. He pointed to a pile of furs on the far side of the dwelling. "Your bed." He took the other side, near the entrance. He lay down, rifle at his side, and seemed to fall asleep instantly. Arya stared at his silhouette in the moonlight. She was trapped, a prisoner in her captor's hut. The unwilling bride wasn't just a threat to her father. It was her new, terrifying reality. She lay on the furs, her entire body shaking, and listened to the sound of her enemy breathing in the dark. The days bled into one another, a monotonous cycle of sun, work, and tension. Arya's hands, once the measure of her breeding, became calloused and strong. The buckskin dress, which she had initially despised, was now a functional second skin. She learned to haul water from the hidden spring, to identify edible roots under Narlin's patient guidance, and to hold her tongue under Tarza's relentless goading. Tarza saw her as a bad omen, a white sickness in their camp. "The Ni," he would hiss, using the Apache word for white people. "They are a plague, and you are his weakness." He would gesture toward Kyle. "He should have killed you." "Then he would be a murderer, like the men who attacked my wagon," Arya retorted one afternoon, her voice sharp. Tarza's eyes narrowed. "They were white. He is half white. The snake eats its own tail. You are all the same." The burning cage of her life was not just the physical prison of the canyon. It was the slow, agonizing burn of her old self being charred away. She was no longer Miss Harrington of Boston. She was Arya, the woman who hauled water. And the center of that cage, the man who held the key, was Cale. He was a ghost. He would be gone for days, leading raids, not on settlers, she learned, but on the Thorn Overland supply lines, the crews laying tracks for the railroad. He would return, not with scalps, but with repeating rifles, ammunition, and food. He never touched her. He slept by the door, a silent guardian, but his presence was a constant, simmering heat. She watched him. She watched him treat his men with a harsh but absolute fairness. She watched him give the largest share of the food to Narlin and the children. She saw him one night, standing alone at the canyon's edge, looking east toward the lands that had been stolen. His posture, usually so proud, was bowed with a grief so profound, it ached. One evening, she dared to speak to him. He was cleaning his rifle, his hands moving with meticulous care. "You read?" she said. It wasn't a question. He didn't look up. "My mother was white." The admission hung in the air, a shocking, personal detail. She was a teacher, captured in a raid when she was a girl. My father was the chief. Was? He died in a peace negotiation at Fort Bowie. They offered him a blanket and a handshake. The blanket carried smallpox. The handshake was followed by a bullet. Arya sat, horrified. That's barbaric." Kyle finally looked up, his grey eyes pinning her. "Yes, it was. Your father called the officer who did it a hero of the frontier. I read about it in a Boston newspaper." Arya recoiled as if struck. "My father wouldn't. He doesn't know." "He knows," Kyle said, the words cutting. "He knows what it costs to lay his metal tracks. He just doesn't care. He believes we are animals, so I will be the animal he fears." "And your mother?" Arya asked, her voice small. "She taught me to read. She taught me to speak her language. She taught me to see the white world, so I could fight it. She died from the same blanket that killed my father." He turned back to his rifle. The conversation was over. A new, confusing emotion began to war with Arya's hatred. It was a grudging respect. It was a terrifying, unwelcome empathy. She saw the man, not the savage, She saw the sun, not the captor. The burning of her anger was shifting, becoming something else, something deeper and more dangerous. A few days later, Taza went too far. Arya was returning from the spring, her shoulders aching. Taza stepped into her path, his eyes glittering with malice. "The white woman plays at being Inde," he said, using the Apache word for the people. "But she is just a whore. Kyle's whore." Arya's hand moved before her mind could stop it. She slapped him. Hard. Taza's head snapped back. A deadly silence fell over the camp. He raised his hand, his face a mask of rage. Before he could strike, his wrist was seized in an iron grip. Kyle stood between them. He had moved without a sound. "She is mine," Kyle said to Taza, his voice lethally soft. "You will not touch her. You will not speak to her. If you do, I will kill you." The threat was absolute. Taza, trembling with rage, stared at Kyle, then at Arya. He wrenched his arm free and stalked away. Arya was shaking. Kyle turned to her. His eyes were not kind. They were furious. "Did I not tell you to stay away from him? He called me. You are a fool," Kyle snapped. "You are not in Boston. You cannot slap a man like Taza and expect to keep your life. Your pride is a luxury you cannot afford here. You almost died for it." You defended me," she stammered. "I defended my property," he corrected her, his voice cold. "I told you. You are my weapon. Nothing more." He strode away, leaving her standing in the dust. But his words felt false. She had seen his eyes. It wasn't just property he was defending. It was her. The cage was shrinking, the air growing hotter. She was trapped between Taza's hatred, Narlin's pity, and Kyle's iron control. But the true prison was her own heart, which had begun to beat with a traitorous, unwilling rhythm every time her captor entered the room. The burning was no longer just anger, it was confusion, and it was terrifying. In Prescott, the civilized world was moving. Julian Vance sat in the opulent, wood-paneled office of Bartholomew Black Bart Thorne. Thorne was a large man, physically and in reputation. He wore a fine wool suit, but a large-caliber revolver was strapped to his hip, a clear sign that his business was conducted by any means necessary. "The situation, Mr. Vance, has become complicated," Thorne rumbled, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. Julian, whose hands were still shaking slightly, accepted his. "Complicated. It's a disaster, Thorne. That savage, Cale, he's threatened to ruin her. He'll make her his wife. We have to get her back." Thorne took a slow sip. "Patience, my boy. This is a delicate negotiation." Negotiation. Major Croft is planning a full-scale assault. He wants to ride into that canyon with 2 companies of cavalry. "Which," Thorne said, pointing a thick finger at Julian, "is exactly what we cannot allow. Croft is a blunt instrument. He'll go in, guns blazing, and your pretty little Arya will be the first one to catch a bullet, and Cale will be long gone." "Then what do we do?" Julian asked, his voice cracking with desperation. Thorne leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "We use a sharper knife. You see, Julian, your fiancé's capture is, in its own way, an opportunity." "An opportunity? I love her." "Of course you do. But her father loves his railroad more. And I love my land contracts. Kyle is the last resistance. If we can wipe out his entire band, the treaty is sealed, the railroad is built, and Senator Harrington is a very, very wealthy man. As are you, my boy. As are you." Julian stared. "But, Arya, we will rescue her," Thorne said smoothly. "My men, the Thorne Rangers, as they're affectionately called, are efficient, far more so than the army. They know this territory. This was the twist. Thorn had no intention of letting the army handle this. "Here is the plan," Thorn continued, tapping the desk. "You will go to Major Croft. You will tell him you have a source, a guide, someone who knows a secret, unguarded way into Kale's Canyon." "Do we have such a guide?" "We do," Thorn smiled. "His name is Silas. He works for me. He will lead Croft's cavalry into the wrong canyon. A beautiful, inescapable box canyon, about 5 miles south. A perfect trap." Julian's blood chilled. "A trap? But those are U.S. soldiers. They'll be ambushed," Thorn said, as if discussing the weather. "By Apache. A terrible tragedy. Croft will be dead. His men scattered. The territory will be in chaos." "By Apache? But Kale will be in his canyon." "Exactly. My man Silas will make sure a few soldiers escape to tell the tale. The tale will be that Kale's forces are larger and more brutal than we thought. While the army is in disarray, my Thorn Rangers, who will be waiting, will ride into the correct canyon, the one I know the location of, and wipe out Kale's band while they're celebrating their victory over Croft." "And Aurea?" Julian whispered. "My men will find her in the chaos. They will be the heroes. They'll bring her back to you. Kyle will be dead. The Apache will be broken. The army will be begging for civilian help. My help. And the railroad will be built." Julian looked at the whiskey in his glass. This was monstrous. It was a massacre. It was a betrayal of the U.S. Army. I can't," Julian said, his voice weak. "That's treason." Thorn's smile vanished. "Let me be clear, Mr. Vance. Your future with Miss Harrington is entirely dependent on her father's success. Her father's success is dependent on my railroad, and my railroad is dependent on that canyon being cleansed. You are either a partner in this, or you are a liability." Thorn leaned back, his hand casually resting on the butt of his revolver. "Besides, do you really want her back? After that half-breed has married her? Think of the scandal, Julian. Think of the whispers in Boston. No. This way is cleaner. The savage who touched her is killed. She is rescued, a tragic heroine. Your family's honor is preserved." Thorn's words, "after married her," struck Julian like a physical blow. The image of Arya, defiled, was more horrifying to his pride than the thought of a military massacre. His fiancée, his property, had been soiled. He picked up the whiskey glass. He drained it in one gulp, the liquor burning his throat. "Fine," Julian Vance said, his voice hard. "Tell me about this guide, Silas." The snake had revealed its plan. The most civilized man in the room had just agreed to a bloodbath, all to protect his own fragile pride and secure his fortune. The true savage wasn't the one in the canyon. He was the one wearing a wool suit. Arya knew she had to escape. She had to warn someone. She didn't know about Julian's betrayal, but she knew Kale was right about Thorn. She had seen the brand on the rifles Kale's men brought back. TOC, Thorn Overland Company. The same men who attacked her wagon. Her father was in business with murderers. She had to get to Fort Verde. She had to tell Major Croft the truth. She planned for a week. She saved slivers of dried meat. She mapped the guards' patterns. Narlan, she sensed, knew what she was doing. The old woman left a full water skin near Aria's sleeping furs. It was a silent, dangerous gift. The night Kyle and Taza took the strongest warriors on a raid was her chance. She slipped out of the wickiup, a shadow among shadows. She moved past the single, sleepy guard and into the narrow, rocky fissure that served as the canyon's hidden exit. She ran, her bound ankle protesting, but her new, hardened body responding. She was free. For 2 hours she scrambled over rocks, her lungs burning, the moon her only guide. She was almost to the desert floor when she heard them. Horses, not Apache ponies, heavy-booted American chargers. Spread out! Thorn wants this whole area swept clean before the army boys get here. Arya froze, pressing herself into a crevice. Below her, not 20 yards away, were 5 men. They wore the Thorn Overland insignia on their dusters, the Thorn Rangers. They were dragging someone, an Apache woman. Not from Cale's camp, a scavenger, perhaps. "Where is Cale's stronghold?" the leader demanded. The woman spat at him. The leader laughed. Stubborn, just like the rest. He pulled his revolver. "It don't matter. We'll find him. Mr. Thorn wants a clean slate." He shot her. The sound echoed, a flat, ugly crack. Arya's hand flew to her mouth, stifling her scream. These were Thorn's men, her father's partners. They were executing people. One of the men dismounted. "What's that, boss?" He pointed up. Toward her. She had been seen. "Well, well, look what we have here." The leader grinned, his teeth yellow in the moonlight. "A little white doe, running from the buck?" "Please!" Arya scrambled out, her hands up. "I'm Arya Harrington. My wagon was attacked. You have to take me to Fort Verde." The men looked at each other, then laughed. "Arya Harrington?" the boss said. "Well, that's a stroke of luck. Mr. Thorn will be real pleased. He said we were supposed to rescue you from the main camp, but this saves us the trouble." What are you talking about? Take me to the fort." "The fort? Oh no, little lady. See, Mr. Thorn and your fiancé, Mr. Vance, they got a special arrangement. You're coming with us." Her fiancé? Julian? The world tilted. "Julian knows you? Knows us? He hired us," the man chortled, advancing on her. "Well, him and Thorn. See, you're the tragic victim, and we're the heroes." He lunged for her. Arya screamed and threw the only weapon she had, Narlin's water skin. It struck him in the face. She turned and scrambled back up the rocks. "Get her!" A bullet chipped the stone by her head. She was trapped. The men were climbing, laughing. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the rocks above. It was Tarza. He dropped onto the leader, a knife in his hand. The man screamed, a wet, choked sound. 2 more warriors appeared. Kyle. He hadn't gone on the raid. He had followed her. Kyle's rifle cracked. One of the climbers fell. The other 2 turned to fight. Kyle was on them in a blur of buckskin and steel. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution, as brutal and swift as the one Arya had just witnessed. In 30 seconds it was over. Arya was slumped against the rock, shaking so hard she couldn't stand. Tarza wiped his blade and looked at her, his face a mask of contempt. He said something to Cale in Apache. Kyle ignored him. He walked to Arya. His face was granite in the moonlight. He was breathing heavily, his fury a tangible thing. "You ran," he stated. I saw them," she whispered, pointing. They killed that woman. They said, Julian, my fiancé, he hired them, with Thorn." Kyle's expression didn't change, but his eyes, the storm in his grey eyes, intensified. "I know. I have been tracking them. They are here to kill us all." "Julian, he's betraying the army," she choked out. "He's leading them into a trap." "I know," Kyle said again. "My scout heard their guide, Silas, boasting at a saloon. He knew. He had known all of it. He had known, and he had let her. You let me run," she realized. "I followed you," he corrected, "to see if you were a fool or a liar. If you met them, you were a spy. If you ran from them, you were just a fool." He knelt, his gaze softening for the first time. "You are not a spy." I'm a fool," she wept, her body finally succumbing to the terror. Julian, They're all murderers. They are, he said. He reached out, not to grab her, but to brace her. And now you have no one, no father, no fiancé. You have only me. He pulled her to her feet. Taza watched, his face carved from stone. Kyle pulled Arya close, his arm around her waist, and half carried her back toward the canyon. When they returned to the rancheria, the camp was awake, alerted by the gunfire. Kyle did not take her to his wickiup. He walked her to the center of the camp by the main fire. He turned to his people. Taza stood beside him, his arms crossed. She ran, Taza announced, and she was caught by the knee. She was found by them, Kyle's voice boomed, silencing the murmurs. She saw them murder one of our people. She saw the face of her own people, and she ran from them. She came back. He looked at Arya. She was still shaking, her face pale. Her people are coming, Kyle said. The soldiers, led by her betrothed, the Thorn Rangers, led by the man who buys her father. They are coming to kill us, to kill our children. They plan to trap the soldiers and blame us. A wave of fear went through the small band. But they do not know that we know, Kyle continued, and they do not know that she is no longer Arya Harrington of Boston. She is my wife. Arya's head snapped up. What? Taza is right, Kyle said, his voice low, for her alone. You are a weakness. They will see you and try to take you. They will not see my wife. They will not see an Inde. He turned to Nalin. Nalin, prepare her. No, Arya whispered, backing away. Kale, no. This isn't part of it. This is a lie. It was a threat, Kyle said, seizing her arm. Now it is a necessity. They come to kill us because you are here. If you are one of us, if you are mine, you will be protected. And you will fight. Nalin and 2 other women took her. They took her to the wickiup. They were not gentle. They brushed out her hair, drawing it back tightly. They used crushed berries and clay to paint her face, a dark red line across her cheeks and the bridge of her nose, a symbol of the warrior's bride. Nalin, her eyes sad, held Arya's face. You were nay. Now, you are Inde, or you are dead. They led her back to the fire. It was not a wedding. It was a claiming, a binding. Kyle stood before her. He wore no paint, only the terrifying resolve of a man about to go to war. He held a knife. He sliced his own palm, the dark blood welling. He held it out to her. Your blood or mine, Arya. But you must choose. Your old life, or your new one. She looked at the firelight on his face, at the blood on his hand. She thought of Julian's soft hands, now stained with treason. She thought of Thorn's laugh. She thought of the woman shot in the rocks. Her old life was a lie. It was a gilded, poisonous cage. This was harsh. It was brutal. But it was real. Slowly, her hand shaking, Arya Harrington reached out. She did not offer her own hand to be cut. She pressed her palm against his, mingling her skin with his blood. My new life, she whispered. A gasp went through the camp. Even Taza looked stunned. Kyle's hand closed over hers, his grip warm and strong. His grey eyes burned into hers, and this time there was no coldness. There was no calculation. There was only a raw, possessive, and undeniable fire. The unwilling part of her heart had been burned away. She was his, and the men who were coming to rescue her were now her enemies. The trap was set, but not the one Thorn had planned. Kale's rancheria was not in the box canyon Silas was leading Major Croft to. It was in the canyon parallel to it, separated by a high, narrow ridge. From this ridge, Kale and his warriors could look down on both the killing ground and the approach path where Thorn's rangers were waiting. The soldiers will ride in, Kale explained to Arya. using stones to mark the positions. Silas will lead them. He will escape up the east trail. Thorn's men, he pointed to another set of stones, are waiting there to finish any soldiers who flee and to ride down on us. Or so they think. They've divided themselves, Arya said, her voice taut. She was a different woman. The face paint felt like a mask of strength. Narlin had given her a knife. She knew how to use it. Yes, Kyle said. They are two fires, and we will use their own heat to burn them. He looked at Taza. The warrior who had witnessed her choice at the fire gave a curt, respectful nod. The trap for the Thorn Rangers is set. Boulders high on the pass. They will be crushed before they ever see us. Good, Kyle said. Arya, you will stay with Narlin and the children in the high caves. No, Arya said. The word was immediate, absolute. Both Kyle and Taza looked at her. I will not hide, not any more. Julian, he betrayed me. He betrayed the army. He thinks I am a prize to be rescued. I want him to see me. Kyle studied her face. This is not a game, Arya. I know, she said. I am your wife, am I not? I will not hide. She looked at the stones. The guide. Silas. He's the one who will lead the soldiers into the trap. He's the one I want. Kyle saw the steel in her. He nodded. Taza, you will lead the ambush on Thorn's men. I will deal with the soldiers. He hated it. He was being forced to save the men who had been sent to kill him in order to destroy the greater evil. The sun was high when the sound of cavalry echoed up the canyon. Major Croft and his 2 companies, 60 men, rode in, their blue uniforms and sabers a stark contrast to the red rock. Julian Vance rode beside Croft, looking pale and nervous. The guide, Silas, was at the front. It's just up here, Major, Silas called out, pointing deeper into the box canyon. The rancheria! They're trapped! Croft raised his hand. Hold, something's not right. It's too quiet. They're just scared, Major, Julian urged, his voice high. We should charge. On the ridge above, Arya watched. She was hidden behind a cluster of rocks, Kyle beside her. He's so eager, she whispered, her voice filled with venom. Wait, Kyle breathed. As the soldiers entered the canyon's deepest point, Silas suddenly spurred his horse. Ambush! It's an ambush! He screamed, veering off toward the eastern trail, the escape route. After him, Croft yelled. No! Kyle bellowed. His voice, amplified by the canyon, rolled down like thunder. The soldiers stopped, looking up, confused. Kyle stood. Major Croft, do not follow him. You are being led to your death. You are in a trap. Kyle! Croft roared, drawing his revolver. Show yourself, you coward! Julian Vance! Arya shrieked, standing beside Kyle. Julian! Julian looked up. His face went ashen. He saw her. He saw the face paint. He saw the buckskin dress. He saw the Apache warrior standing beside her, his hand on her waist. Arya! He cried, his voice a mix of horror and disbelief. My God, what has he done to you? He has saved me, she screamed back. From you, you and Thorn. Silas is leading you to Thorn's men. It's a double cross, you fool. Major Croft stared, his mind racing. Arya, Kale, together? It's a trick, Major, Julian shrieked. She's been turned. She's a savage, just like him. Kill them! But it was too late. From the ridge above Silas's escape route, a new sound. Gunfire. Not from Kale. It's Thorn, Croft yelled, realizing the truth. He's firing on us. Bartholomew Thorn and his 30 rangers, seeing the plan go wrong, had opened fire on the soldiers below, assuming Silas had led them into the correct trap. Taza! Now! Kyle roared. On the other side of the ridge, a mighty crash. Taza and his men had released the boulders. The pass Thorn's men were using as a sniper's nest collapsed, taking half of the Rangers with it in an avalanche of rock and dust. The canyon of two fires erupted. "Kyle!" Tarza's voice cried out. "Thorn! He's coming through!" Thorn, furious and trapped, was leading his surviving men over the ridge, fighting his way toward Kale's position. "Arya, go!" Kyle yelled, shoving her toward the caves. "Go!" But Arya saw Julian. He had dismounted, his face a mask of pure hatred, and was scrambling up the rocks toward her. You whore!" he screamed, pulling his own pistol. "You Apache whore! I'll kill you both!" Arya ran, not to the caves, but toward Julian. She met him on a narrow ledge. "You betrayed them. You betrayed me. You shamed me!" He lunged, grabbing her. They struggled. Julian, soft and civilized, was no match for the woman Arya had become. She drove Narlin's knife into his arm. He screamed, dropping his gun. At that moment, Tazar appeared, charging Kyle's position. "Kale, behind you!" Bartholomew Thorn, his face black with soot, leveled his buffalo rifle at Kale. Tarza threw himself in front of Kale. The rifle boomed. Tarza took the heavy-caliber slug in the chest, the impact throwing him backward. "No!" Kyle roared. He fired his own rifle, hitting Thorn square in the chest. The big man stood for a second, a look of pure surprise on his face, before toppling off the ridge. Kale rushed to Tarza. The warrior was dying, his blood staining the rock. "Tarza!" Tarza looked, not at Kyle but at Arya, who was standing over a weeping, bleeding Julian. Tarza smiled. "She is Inde," he coughed. "A warrior's bride." He grasped Kyle's arm. "Lead them." And he was gone. Kyle rose, his face terrible. Below, Major Croft had rallied his men. They were fighting their way out of the canyon, away from the chaos. Kyle walked to where Arya stood. Julian was on the ground, whimpering. "He's yours," Kyle said, his voice flat. Arya looked at the man she had once promised to marry. He was pathetic. "No," she said. "He's theirs." She gestured to the soldiers. "Let the Enni judge their own." Kyle nodded. He grabbed Julian by his ruined shirt and dragged him to the edge. "Major Croft!" he yelled. "Here is your traitor." He threw Julian Vance down the scree slope. Croft's men seized him. The battle was over. There was a long silence. Major Croft, his uniform torn, looked up at Kale and Arya. He owed them his life. He had seen the truth. "Kale!" he shouted. "The treaty! I'll speak to the senator. I'll tell them what Thorn did." Kyle looked at Tarza's body. "You will tell them. This land is ours. You will tell them the railroad will not pass here. Not while I live." Croft stared for a long moment. He looked at Arya, standing proudly by Kyle's side, her face painted, her hand stained with her husband's blood. He nodded slowly. "God help us all," he muttered. He gave the order, and the cavalry retreated, taking Julian Vance with them. The canyon was silent, save for the wind. Arya stood with Kyle on the ridge. The sun was setting, painting the rocks in shades of blood and fire. She was no longer Arya Harrington. She was not a prisoner. Kyle turned to her. His grey eyes, which had been so cold, were now filled with a fire that matched the sunset. He still bore the grief of Tarza, but he also bore a new peace. He reached out and gently, with his thumb, smudged the ceremonial paint on her cheek. "It is over," he said. "No," she said, leaning into his touch. "It is just beginning." He bent his head, and for the first time, he kissed her. It was not a kiss of capture or of claiming. It was a kiss of equals, forged in chaos and sealed in blood. She was no longer his unwilling, burning bride. She was just his. And she was home. And so, the senator's daughter, who slept in the arms of a man she thought was a savage, awoke to find her own civilized world was the true heart of darkness. She was forged into a new woman by the heat of the desert and the fire of a warrior's heart. What did you think of Arya's transformation? Was Chaol a villain or a hero? And what do you think should happen to the traitor, Julian Vance? If you loved this story of drama, twists, and burning passion, don't keep it a secret. Like this video, share it with someone else who needs a great story. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more tales of love and karma every single week. Hit that bell icon so you never miss an ending. Thanks for listening.